Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Kings of Kimuras. My guest today is Charles Byrd. Charles Byrd is a very experienced MMA fighter, fought in the UFC for many years. He was also a head coach for another gym in Dallas called Fortis. We're happy to announce that we'll be working with him. In this podcast, we kind of discuss a little bit of his history and some of his expectations for being a coach at Corvo. But yeah, we're going to be adding an MMA program. We'll have a beginner program, an advanced, and we'll have some sparring days as well. It's something I've kind of wanted to do for a long time, but just trying to find the right coach that could head it up and put the same amount of effort into it that I would be willing to put into it. I'm not an MMA expert, but I do look forward to working with this team and Charles as well, and kind of leading the way for mixed martial arts in Dallas. So I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe and follow for more information on class schedule and times. Thank you.
Welcome to Kings of Kimuras.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Kings of Kimuras. I'm here with Charles Byrd, and we did this before, I think the biggest thing that I've learned in this podcasting space is that whatever will go wrong will absolutely go wrong. And I've always had problems with cameras or sound or something, so I think we finally got it figured out now, but thanks for doing it again. Appreciate it.
Oh man, glad to have me back on. Glad, how much footage was lost last time?
A good portion of it. We got the first half of it, and then the last, 25 minutes or so, we didn't get that. So, but it is what it is, and we'll do it again, and we'll do our best to kind of recap some of that stuff. So first I just want to for our audience that doesn't know you, just kind of give a background of your history and martial arts.
Okay. Yeah. So, I've been competing martial arts for a long time as a kid. And you want to go back that far or just?
Yeah. We can talk about that for sure.
Yeah. As a kid, Ishinryu karate, I took that for several years. And then as I got older, wrestling, and then eventually transitioned into mixed martial arts and Muay Thai around 22, 23. And has been doing that ever since. 42 now.
And so you had some experience fighting in the UFC for a while.
Yes.
How was that?
That was a good experience. Got signed to the UFC around 2017 and then eventually stopped fighting altogether around 2020. But yeah, it was a great experience.
So I was thinking about some questions from the last time that we talked into now. And, I guess one of the big questions I want to know is how much harder is it to get into the UFC now than when you were in it?
I think now it just depends on how you, I think it's definitely more difficult now because I feel like the talent and just the evolution of the sport has increased tremendously. Guys are learning things a lot quicker and are able to apply those things in the fight a lot faster than before, part of that old school, I guess you could say second or third generation of the newer, well-rounded style of mixed martial arts. We still had specialists in the beginning where one guy was really a grappler, one guy was a really good striker. But now it seems that, everybody has to be good at everything. You got to be tough. You got to know how to strike. You got to know how to grapple at a high level. And I feel like that makes it definitely a lot harder to reach that top level.
Yeah, in my mind, one of the most recent, or I guess I should say during a time period that I was heavily watching UFC. And of course I'm a jiu-jitsu guy, so I've always rooted for those jiu-jitsu guys to get in there. But I remember watching Damian Maia versus Anderson Silva, and it was so clear that if you didn't have the ability to dictate where the fight took place,
right,
that you were probably going to lose that fight, because Damian had no ability to take him down.
That's good.
And after that, he made those adjustments and he became like a much more well-rounded fighter. But I feel like because he had dedicated so much of his life to that aspect of ground grappling, that it was, you know, at the top level, it was like very difficult for him to catch up to those guys.
No, that's true. Yeah, after that Silva fight, he definitely did improve his wrestling, because I remember the fight with him and Chael. And he threw Chael, and I was like extremely shocked that he did that. But you can tell he definitely went back to the drawing board and definitely added those missing pieces to his game. And I think at one point he even was out there. I think at the tail end he was out striking some guys too. Right?
Yeah, he was. So now you said you moved on to coaching athletes, and I'm assuming, you know, by what you were saying about more of these guys are coming into the fight game now that are well-rounded. That's the approach that you take with it.
Yes. Yeah, that's the approach that I take. And the other thing is this, like, now you got kids that are now transitioning from little, like, you know, teenagers that are now making their, you know, adult transition into fighting, that have been doing it for, like, you know, a long time.
Yeah.
And are very, very well prepared and been under the same coaching and you know, what's called I'm looking for. This is the same upbringing. Like, they've had the same coach, they've had the same style, they've worked with high level wrestling from an early age, high level striking, high level grappling. So that makes it very, like I said, it makes the stakes very higher, and the competition is very sharp.
Yeah, I'm even seeing some guys in, you know, like the jiu-jitsu community now. Like one comes to mind for sure is Cody Steele. You know, I remember watching him as like a young athlete competing at, you know, local events and stuff, and he's decided to make that transition into fighting MMA. And you know, he decided like pretty early on in his MMA career that, you know, he had to make that adjustment and move to a camp that really had that more well-rounded instruction. You know,
Yeah, where was he at originally?
he was in Austin at Fight Factory, which is, you know, like the Tackets and stuff are from that same gym. And I think he had like a couple MMA fights out of that gym, and I know they had like a more of like an amateur MMA program, but the coach down there, jiu-jitsu coach, is like very knowledgeable. But, you know, when it comes to like getting in there and like dealing with strikers, you know, that's a completely different aspect. And he realized it instead of, you know, I guess like some people make that mistake of like not seeing it early enough to make that adjustment.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even there are still some guys now that are somewhat specialists. Like, you know, if the fight gets in that particular situation on the ground, or, you know, like, you know, they can take over and control the fight and win. But I mean, I think I've seen his last fight. I mean, he's pretty good. He's tough too.
Yeah, he is. Like, he's kind of always had that toughness. I remember like him getting disqualified for some jiu-jitsu tournaments just because he was like doing what they would consider illegal technique, slamming somebody too hard or something. But, you know, it's perfect for that MMA style. You know, another one comes to mind. I don't know the athlete's name, but I want to say it says a 125 or 135 in the UFC for men's. Is there a 125?
Yeah, there is.
So it was a title fight. I guess the champions from Houston area, and he fought a guy from a guy from Japan.
Yeah, Taitsutara.
Yeah, and you know, Ty is like very tough. I give him credit for that, and he took a lot of damage in that fight. But again, it goes back to like not being able to dictate where that fight took place. You know, and once it was on the feet, he had a very difficult time getting it to the ground.
Yeah, and I think in that fight too, I've seen Tara, and I think he has pretty high level striking. I think his mind was stuck on that his only ability to win that fight was on the ground. So I think it just kind of stressed him out when he couldn't keep him there.
Yeah.
But I do think his striking is actually really good. He's very sharp.
You know, obviously he was like coming from Japan. I don't remember where that fight took place, but does that travel take a toll on you as a, you know, when you step in there and fight? I mean, is it?
I mean, it really depends. Yeah. Like if these, you know, these say China or the UFC hasn't been to Japan, but China, Dubai, that have like that 15-hour flight, you know, 16-hour flight, you have to definitely get there early enough. I mean, earlier than what the UFC will allow you to check in. You just got to do that in order to kind of acclimate to the time difference, because it can get to you. It will affect you.
When you were fighting professionally, did you ever have a fight at elevation?
No. I think the only fight I had was Vegas, and that's like barely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know like that plays an effect as well, right?
Oh, yeah, it does.
Yeah, and I didn't realize how much that affects you until, I went to Denver one time and did some hiking, and it was crazy. I'd take like 20 steps, and I would be like physically exhausted,
What is the elevation?
It's like a mile high, so,
okay.
Yeah, so.
I know in Vegas there's Mount Charleston,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we were up to like, I think 8,000.
Yeah, that's crazy elevation.
And yeah, when you get to moving, heart's beating out of your chest, you got to slow down.
Yeah, we did. We recently went to Hawaii and we did a couple hikes there, and we hiked Kilauea, which is like one of the volcanoes, and it was like 5,000 feet. But we didn't hike like from sea level to 5,000. We drove in, but as you're driving in, you can tell even like the car is driving differently, and I think we did like 1,000 feet of elevation or something like that, and you forget about it until like you sit and think about it. You're like, man, like that elevation makes a huge difference in your ability to output effort.
And also how steep the climb is.
Yeah.
Like UFC Mexico, we had the bright idea of going to, I'm about to butcher this name, but it's where there's a temple at, I think it's Teotihuacan or something like that.
Teotihuacan?
No, it's
not that
like
one?
it's so not the big pyramid.
Okay.
It's like a small pyramid. It's on this like big, it's on this peak of this little hill or mountain. But the elevation, I think the town starts at like 6,000, and then you hike up to like 7,000 plus. But you literally go straight up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's big steps. I mean, you're high stepping the whole way up, and you're winding. I mean, that after a few minutes, I mean, your heart rate's in the one. It was high.
Yeah.
It was very high. It was tough.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, did you were there for a fight or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, UFC Mexico about 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay. So, going back to like training, you've trained for a long time. Is there any one aspect of training that, if you're talking to like a young individual that is like has a goal to be a fighter, where's the first thing that you would start? Because like I think that, if we're talking like kids under 10 years old, I don't think like a mixed martial arts program is probably like right for them, especially with, striking and stuff. But what would you say, like, in your opinion, is the best base to start with?
The best base is the base that allows you to have very good balance.
Okay.
So if you're more inclined to grapple, I mean, wrestling, right? There's some guys that develop that as far as just in jiu-jitsu. Boxing is one, and there's more time. Just whatever allows you to develop a good awareness of where your feet are and your balance is. The fight starts on the feet. But if you can keep it there, you're in a good position. If you can control somebody else's balance and get them on the ground, then you're in a great position. So it's like whatever allows you to kind of really understand what your balance is. I feel like that's the number one thing.
Yeah. We work with a lot of little kids, start at like 3, 4, 5 years old. And my mindset has always been when working with them that you are teaching them jiu-jitsu, but it's more of like how to control their body, and we do like a limited number of days, and parents are always like, what's something else that I can put my kid in? And I always recommend gymnastics. Some form of like, I call it like body control sports where you have guys that are like break dancing or rock climbing or something like this. Every time that I've had somebody come in that has a background like that, whether it's gymnastics, rock climbing, or dancing or something, those people advance so much faster than some guy that's like done a team sport, Yeah,
it's so funny. Saxon used to say something, and it was pretty funny. But what he would say is like he would always associate with, black guy dance, good fighter. And he would say like, white guy, he's like can't dance.
Yeah,
which is not true, but he would always make that reference,
Right.
And that's 100% true. You see, like the Russians and their system, they require their kids to go and do gymnastics, or the Ukrainians, like Lomachenko, they had to do the traditional folk style dancing to learn how to keep their feet underneath them. So yeah, I agree 100%. Like even me as a kid, I grew up breakdancing and tumbling and never like officially in gymnastics, but anybody that knows me, I've always been the type to tumble after practice and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's a great base.
Yeah, I had a kid one time, and he actually turned out to be a really good student. His dad was like an elite level tennis player, and this kid, from like an early age, had always done just like super crazy sports. He rode BMX, and this is way back in like the Dave Mirra days. And at 4 years old, he held the world record for the highest vertical jump on a 10-foot vert ramp.
On a bike?
On a bicycle.
Oh, damn.
And he had never learned to run or anything. So when he came to me, he must have been like 6. And the first time I had him like do some sprints and move around, he ran like he was riding a bicycle. It was like that pedaling motion, And it took a little while to like break him of that. But the kid had amazing balance from like riding that bicycle for so long.
So before he was 6, that's when he did that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
he
20-foot vert ramp?
A 10-foot vert ramp. Yeah.
And that's still high.
Yeah. No, I definitely wouldn't be riding a bike on a 10-foot vert ramp. And he was sponsored by Red Bull and stuff too. This kid was like really good. And recently I was talking with the dad, and they're living out in Long Beach, California now. He's training. I guess there's some former heavyweight Russian from the UFC that's like teaching grappling out there. And, it's a Russian guy, so it's like it's not easy at all,
Yeah, I'm sure.
But I'm glad to hear like he's back into training, because he took some time off and focused on academics. No, he doesn't do anything, like none of that. He did jiu-jitsu for a while, and then after jiu-jitsu, he decided to get into parkour, and did that for 4 or 5 years or something, and then just focused on academics and did really well in school. And now that he's graduated, he's back to doing some type of
finding something he wants to do. Okay.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about, you and I have had these conversations about starting an MMA program here at Corvo. And, like initially you came in, you trained a little bit, you've sent some fighters and stuff over here to us. And, we had some talks and like came to the decision that, I feel like it would be a good fit for both of us to work together. So, what is like your kind of goal overall with that?
My goal is to provide world-class training that can produce world-class athletes. And I'm sure you agree, you're the same way.
Yeah.
I know the grapplers that come out of this your dojo, and that's what I want to provide. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm very excited for that. I think with your grappling expertise and just the level of training that is here, I think with the stuff that I've been able to attain fighting and and coaching over the years, I think it'd be a great fit.
Yeah, I think so too. And we've talked about this before about I've always wanted to do like an MMA program, but obviously I'm not skilled in that aspect. I don't have the connections or anything, and I never wanted to just like do it just to say like I did it. You know what I mean? I want to like I'm very much the type of person that if I'm going to do something, I want to like do it to the best of my ability. And so, the opportunity came up with you, and I felt like it was just a good fit,
Yeah, I think it's a great fit. I'm excited, man. I'm just excited. I don't have much words. I just want to be able to have guys competing at an extremely high level and be able to finish the fight.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be good, and again, like jiu-jitsu, I want it to be a part of it, but my understanding of the fight game is like you're not really winning the fight if you're on your back, So it is cool for me because I get to look at jiu-jitsu from a different perspective of, taking the sport out of it and applying it into like a more real situation, and I've, had some conversations with one of my coaches, Justin Flores, and he's had that opportunity as well to, become like a grappler and then work in with like professional athletes. And, some of like the concepts that he's provided me with is like, always having people know what their like first movement is. You know, we've talked about like foot positioning, like, you know, you have to understand of like how are their feet placed, you know, are they leading right or left, or are they squared stance, and each one of those gives you different options, right? So I know, you know, when we talked, you were saying like footwork is like a huge part of what you coach.
Yeah, footwork, and then to agree with you with J-Flow is having a layered attack instead of just one shot or one move here, one bump, like having your first, second, and third option.
Yeah.
In anything that you decide.
Yeah, just always like being prepared, and it goes back to that well-roundedness. You know, you never want to be, you know, going out there and like Damian Maia, right? Like you can't get the takedown, so you've got to like figure something else out, chaining that stuff together. You know, I was watching a video recently. It was a breakdown of Bryce Mitchell and Ilia Topuria, and I guess Bryce is like the only person to ever land a takedown on him inside the octagon. And the guy was kind of showing like how he set it up as opposed to other people, and it was like based off of his strikes. So, you know, I tend to think of like Bryce Mitchell as more of a grappler, but he was able to like put those things together. So, you know, that's what I'm really most excited about, is like taking your expertise in the striking and, you know, the overall like MMA game plan, and then applying some other techniques that, you know, work well together.
Oh yeah. I don't know the takedown you're talking about. I can't remember that fight, but I knew that Bryce is a very, very skilled grappler. He doesn't get a lot of credit, but he is actually very good on the ground.
Yeah, he's got some like crazy views online, but like if you take that stuff out,
take the political stuff away and the crazy stuff that he says, but him as an athlete and his grappling ability, it's pretty high level.
Now, to talk about some of the like craziness, not necessarily with him, but you know, now you're seeing a lot of these MMA fighters trying to like follow that Conor McGregor approach and have like a whole like other persona, like what's the heavyweight guy that's fighting Josh? Yeah. And you know, what is your thought on that?
I mean, my thought on that is it's not necessarily something I would do. It's not something that I would tell people to do. But I definitely do think there is a space for that in the sport. I mean, everybody can't be the same. Yeah, I'm not going to listen to it.
Yeah.
You know, I do think it's kind of cheesy sometimes, but to his credit, the dude can fight.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's putting more eyes on his matches. The UFC, I'm sure, after seeing the last fight with Curtis Blades, like, he can say whatever he wants. I mean, he showed up whenever the fight happened. He put on an exciting match. That's probably one of the best heavyweight fights the UFC has ever had. And, you know, a lot of craziness. One of my favorite things I liked in the fight was he kept flipping the guy off every time he kind of would circle out. Like, he was in character the entire time, but he was also providing a great match for fans to view. And I'm sure people always go back and watch that fight. The UFC probably is seeing that. So, yeah, like, talk all you want. If it helps you put, you know, butts in the stands and stuff like that. I mean, boxers have done it for forever. Obviously, there's a WWE aspect of it that is kind of like so against what real martial arts is. Yeah. But I understand that the business and where it is, they need the UFC and fighting, you know, they need that little one character to kind of stick out.
Yeah, I feel like that's the one thing that jiu-jitsu doesn't really have is, you know, guys, I know a lot of these guys that get on the mic and talk are not as humble as what they pretend to be, you know. And nobody really has that like personality. There's a couple of guys kind of coming out, but you know, I feel like as a competitor myself, you know, I had to create like an alter ego for me to compete. You know, I had to be this person that, you know, somebody that I was, but I had to be like the extreme version of myself because it helped me focus better. And when I was out there competing, you know, I could really like just push myself to my limit. Did you kind of feel that same way when you fought?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think most fighters draw on some type of emotion, whether it's like, you know, past trauma, past, you know, chip on your shoulder here and there, or people, you know, like just you create whatever narrative you want. So it's like, yeah, I would always have like a chip on my shoulder and coming up, and I would use that to motivate me in fights and training and stuff like that, or, thinking about working the guy that's, there to beat me. Always sometimes drawn on the emotion of like, oh, I can die in there. Like just something that motivates you. And I think everybody has that. There are some individuals who don't give a damn. I've met a few of those that are just psychopaths. They can get up and they fight like they're checking the mail in the morning. It's like they don't care.
Yeah, there's definitely some of those people that have that alter ego is their like permanent ego.
Yes.
I think about, the biggest one I can think about in MMA is John Jones. He's like has all this talent. It's kind of like the Tiger Woods thing, like super elite on this extreme end, like the far end of the spectrum as a golfer, but like also extreme on all these other aspects. Like they don't know how to turn it off and on,
Some people, that's just who they are. I mean, there's several guys right now in the UFC, and there's several guys that I met on my way, as coaching that they just showed this, like this, that's just who they are, and this is not a mental task for them. This is just who they are. They love to fight. They love to do this, and, I mean, everybody's different, but.
So, when you were like an up and coming fighter, who was somebody that you kind of like I wouldn't say your favorite fighter because that'd be like really difficult to pick, but like somebody that you watched and you felt was like at the top of their game and you could like draw from some of their experience?
One person was George St. Pierre. To me, he was just, even when fights were, I can't remember the betting lines, but, fights that thought it would be a little bit closer than what it ended up being, he would just always systematically just break people down and just end up being so dominant. And, I know a lot of people, he got a lot of slack for not finishing fights, but when you watched him work and how efficient he was at just implementing his game plan and his system and just finding ways to have small advantages in there, George St. Pierre to me is number one.
Yeah, and he's a guy I know that was heavily into gymnastics as well. I mean, if you watch some of his workouts, even when he was fighting in the UFC, it was like crazy gymnastic workouts.
Yep, he was an innovator to a lot of that newer age, instead of just the old school, dungeon training. Like he was definitely stepping out of that realm and introducing things like the gymnastics and the different strength and conditioning workouts he used to post. And, even now, he's not even fighting. I saw some video with him and Mighty Mouse, and he's like on the sled thing with the feet thing. Like, So now that guy is a lifelong martial artist, even after being a champion. He can tell that's just who he is.
Now, as a coach, I think a big part of it is like managing some expectations, but also like managing output. How do you prevent an athlete from overtraining themselves?
Knowing the athlete, I feel like that's something that through time I've had to learn. With just being able to work with different styles and just different personalities, just knowing who they are and knowing what kind of fighter they are fight night. You can always be able to adjust a training camp to that. You do have your baseline, which you want to make sure you're hitting and what you're getting from the fighter, but everybody's different. And some guys are gamers, some guys aren't. Some guys need to be pushed hard in the gym, some guys don't. If you have a fighter you're just going to go forward, you don't want them taking a lot of damage because that's a natural ability. They're just going to go. You have somebody who's a little bit more timid on the back foot. Maybe they start slow. Well, you got to be able to kind of, put a little pep in the step or give them different things that allow them to be first and not wait. So, I mean, it's just, but every fighter is different. But I think overall, if you have a baseline format of how you train, using phases and knowing when to peak at the right time, I feel like that's always a good recipe for success.
I've heard some athletes talk about tracking their resting heart rate. If they have a hard training the day before and they wake up the next morning and their resting heart rate is elevated, that they do like a lower intensity workout that day. Is that anything that you work with? I mean, not all the way down to the science of the heart rate. No, yeah.
No, I think most strength and conditioning coaches will kind of get into that, but no, it's a lot of it's just asking questions. Hey, how do you feel?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's typically like the best marker, or if you watch somebody and their warm up, you can tell like how stiff they are. And yeah. So, what is your next, let's say, you're in here, we're working together. I know you talked about wanting to start like a beginner program and advanced. Where do you kind of see that moving into? Like let's say we start a beginner program. Like, what is your end goal with that beginner program?
My end game with that is to be able to develop some type of like competition team where we can utilize the things and the training and guys that progress through that system that can eventually go out and start testing themselves and just getting out there and seeing what is working, what's not working. I just competition always. And that's from the young kids to the adults. Anybody that wants to compete, I'm definitely here. I definitely will be here to kind of build that.
That's good. So like for jiu-jitsu, we have like a lot of events, competition events, super fights and stuff. What are ways for amateurs to get experience in MMA or striking?
Striking is in MMA. I mean, MMA is hard. There's not really anything that you can do besides like there's a few. I know Ocho Peterson has his league, True Grit, where he allows like guys to, kind of test themselves before they actually do a real amateur event. It's more like a smoker type setup, but you get the entire the benefit of a real show. There's a few other places around the Metroplex that allow that, where you can just kind of get the understanding what it's like to walk out to the ring or to the cage and have a big spectacle with the lights and the music and the announcer, but it's just an exhibition. It doesn't really count as an amateur fight. So there's plenty of like little development stuff like that, as well as in the striking realm. You have a lot of like the IKF tournaments. If you go into the traditional route, Muay Thai, there's a few of those that are popping up. There's MDL now, that's ran by Vanessa Rojas and them. So I mean, there's plenty of ways to kind of test yourself and then develop as you go, and then eventually, and with like same with jiu-jitsu, I wish they had like a more amateurish like combat jiu-jitsu. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I trained in Hawaii, and I guess like a lot of guys over there are kind of getting into that combat jiu-jitsu where they're dedicating a specific day now to do that style of training. And I think that would be like really cool to be able to get something like that here.
Oh yeah, are they wearing gloves or no gloves?
I don't think they wear gloves.
They don't wear gloves? Yeah, that would be. I mean, I think that would be.
They're
great.
just using like open hand slaps.
Open hand slaps?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I've seen some finishes with the open hand, like guy palm strike down. You seen that?
Yeah, there's a guy out of Austin. I'm like missing his name. He was like B team, whatever their team is called now. Damian Anderson, I think.
Oh yeah, I've met that guy before.
So he finished a guy with strikes from above.
I wonder if that was him that I saw. Was it like palm? And
yes. He's like straight down on top of the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen that clip.
Yeah. He's transitioned over to MMA now too.
Nice. Yeah, I heard he's really good.
Yeah.
His grappling is really good.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah. So, as an amateur, you have the opportunity to like fight in a cage and in a ring. How different are those two atmospheres to fight in?
I mean, obviously the ring, there's no barrier. You can go right through it. I fought both. I mean, definitely prefer the cage. The cage is a weapon all in itself if you know how to use it. If you know how to use the wall, say if I'm a wrestler, there's very good, these D1 wrestlers that are just know how to just pin you there and keep you there.
Yeah.
You see all what Khabib was able to do when he got you against the cage. The ring is definitely more catered towards a striker. You won't see. I mean, there is some grappling, but it's catered towards striking.
Yeah, it seems like in the ring, it's a lot harder to get back up. You can't shoulder walk up the wall, right? I mean, like you said, you're going to go through the ring. I was watching some old Pride fights recently, and some Vanderlei fights in particular, and a lot of those were in the ring, and you would see guys try to get back up, and they make that mistake of like putting hands on the ground and get soccer kicked for it.
Yeah.
Just like crazy, man.
That soccer kick is crazy.
Yeah.
I've never been a fan of that.
Ever. Yeah, it's that one and like the head stomp too. Like I've seen.
Head stomp?
Yeah, like where a guy would be like laying flat and they try to jump over the top and stomp right in the face.
Oh, Shogun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of none of that. I think it definitely takes away from the technicality of the sport. So you're in such a vulnerable position there. It's like, I don't know. I don't think it's very much science to that.
Yeah. Well, they've recently like adjusted the rules in MMA as well, right? For like the grounded opponent. Like now, I know at one point it was like you only had to have like one hand, but now it's like you have to have both knees down or.
Yeah, they explain this every time you go out there too. And it's like, I think it's one knee is you're completely down.
Okay.
But you can't just put the hand down. So you got to have one knee and one hand, if that's what I remember. You can't be on both feet and put your hand down.
Yeah,
That's pretty much what the difference was.
All right.
So at least one knee has to be down.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was this last weekend or maybe it was a couple weeks ago where there was a guy that took a knee and he was kind of in that 4-point position, but he was on his feet, you know, and he like looked for the ref to kind of like call a penalty and the ref didn't call a penalty.
Yeah, they don't, because, you know, you can play the game that way where you're stalling because you just don't want to, you can't get up and, you know, you touch the floor to think you're down, but they've got rid of, you got to go all the way down to one knee.
Yeah, I think that's a lot better because guys would play that game of like putting a hand on the ground so they can't get hit with knees or kicks from that position.
I've literally done it before.
Yeah,
I've done it myself. Yeah.
I think if it's in the rules, like you should be aware of that for sure and use it to your advantage or to your opponent's disadvantage. You know?
Like you're always trying to find the best way for you to win.
Yeah.
So
like in our sport in ADCC, it's very like clear on like what scores points, but there's a whole other aspect of this event where they call it initiations, and you have no idea what the initiation is. So, but it would be like if I took you down and then you applied a submission to me, and then use that submission to sweep me to a top position, you wouldn't gain any sweep points for that. Because I'm the one that initiated the initial movement.
Oh,
you know?
So they don't count reversing?
Right. Yeah, if it's because I started the initial position. Now, if I take you down, you throw up a submission and I escape it, and you don't get back to your feet, I'll score the points off of that. You know?
Okay.
You know, so it's a whole other aspect of the sport that I had to really learn from going to like rules meetings and special instructor courses and stuff. Just to help people prepare for that, because we would lose and I'm like, I don't understand like how we're losing. You know, I feel like our guy was like throwing more submission attempts or whatever, but it was that initiation factor because the table judges are sitting there and like every time, you know, they have corner A and B, every time corner A does something, they tally it. And so I'd look at it at the end of the match and I'm like, I don't understand like how this guy won off of initiations when we had like more reversals or, you know, attempts on submissions. So it's very, very difficult for people to understand initially. And as a coach, like it's changed the way that I kind of coach for that event, because a lot of other events, you know, if you take somebody down and they throw a submission on you and sweep you, like they're going to score the sweep points and you don't get any takedown points.
And they don't score like that?
No, they don't. No.
And is that like IBJJF or is that ADCC?
No, it's only ADCC that scores that way. Yeah.
So in IBJJF, do they still score it if you?
Yeah, they score it. So if you shoot a takedown on somebody in IBJJF and they lock us up a submission, you either have to escape that submission to get your points, or if they shoot that submission and you escape and both people stand back up, you'll gain an advantage for that.
Because you initiated the entire sequence? Okay.
Yeah, but if they take you down, you do a submission and they sweep you with it and they come up on top and they solidify that position, they'll get the sweep points and they'll get an advantage for that submission attempt.
So is ADCC, is it geared towards more finishing sequences?
Yeah, I'd say it's geared towards more finishing and action.
Okay.
That's the biggest thing that they want. You know, they'll give stalling calls much faster than any other event. If you're mounting someone or you're on their back and you're not doing anything, you'll get a stalling warning for that. They won't give you a penalty until like a certain amount of stalling warnings, but if you're just like holding that position, like they're going to force you to make something happen.
Okay.
Which I think is great, because there's a lot of tournaments out there that kind of like reward the guy for getting to a dominant position and then just not seeking the finish. You know, and I mean, I've done that in competition before. You know, like if I've, you know, I medaled at Worlds in the gi, and my whole objective after my first match was get up on points or advantages and then like play the clock. You know, And that's just like you said earlier, like putting your hand on the mat. You know, you're using that rule set as a game to be able to win that event. You know, like the goal is win, not necessarily like finish everybody in a submission. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that is what it is.
I mean, I'd love to be able to go out every tournament and submit every single person, but you know, at some point, like that doesn't happen. You know,
isn't that how Keenan came up with the worm guard? Is that what? Or
Yeah.
To like kind of just slow people down.
Yeah, and they like adjusted the rules against him, where now like if you get a position like that, you only have 30 seconds to move before they'll give you a penalty for like stalling there.
Oh,
so you know the unfortunate thing with jiu-jitsu is like when people innovate, they throw other rules in, and so it's like going the route of judo, in my opinion, where judo got so many rules that now it's like people are less likely to want to go and compete in that and even like train in it, you know, because it's like in judo, there's very few options to compete. You know, there's like an international judo federation. If you want to compete, you have to be a member and compete in that. Where jiu-jitsu has a lot of different options, but I do see people less likely to compete in IBJJS because of how much they've changed the rules. I mean, as to be a black belt affiliated with them, because you know I get my like certificates and stuff through them. I have to do a rules course every single year, and there's always like 15 new rules that they've modified or added every year. And if I don't stay up on that stuff, you know, like I just don't know it. You know, like it's not like I get an email. It's like, hey, we changed this rule. It's like they put it up on their website, and if you're not going and reading it and kind of like looking what were the rules last year, what's changed, you won't even know. So you kind of have to do those rules meetings.
What would cause the rules to change that much and that often?
Stuff that happens in matches, you know, a lot of it is like most recently they changed to where they added a new submission where it's kind of like a toe hold, but you're only doing it with one hand, where prior to that move was illegal. But now they're like, because they want people to get more finishes, they've added that in, and they put it in at like lower ranks where like blue belts can do this technique. And then they had for a while where if you brought you have like a single leg X position, you bring your leg over what their belt buckle line is considered a reap. Well, then because so many people were getting disqualified for that, of like people pushing their foot into that position and forcing the person on the bottom to be disqualified, they changed it to where now you can do it as long as you're not controlling their ankle, you know, because you're like
locked down.
Yeah, so you're like blocking the end of the lever, right? So if you put pressure on their knee, they can't defend that. But now if you don't hold that position, you can bring your leg over the top. So there's always like something like that, or they'll have like a, like a nagi, where, I would say like a big one that I feel like did need to be changed was the 50-50 position, where guys would get in 50-50 where legs are intertwined, and they would sweep and they would hold that position, and then they would allow the guy to sweep them back. And they would do this back and forth to the point of like, okay, there's 30 seconds left. I need to score to win. And they would just time it to where, okay, now I swept and I'm on the top position and I won. Mm-hmm. Now in that position, once you go there, you have like a limited amount, again, 30 seconds to like make something happen or get out of that position, or you'll get a penalty for it.
I mean, that's good.
Yeah, there's some changes that I feel like are good, but then, it's like the, average blue belt competitor, man, you've got to like know an encyclopedia of positions. And and I've done these tests before where they'll show like a 5-move sequence, and they're like, how many points was this? Like, I'm not sure. I've trained jiu-jitsu for a long time, and I really don't know.
Oh wow! And that's IBJJF and then the courses. Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not saying like I can't figure it out, but it's confusing, and especially if you're a guy coaching somebody live and you're like trying to figure out like, oh, like what exactly happened. Unless you're recording it, you're not going to be able to understand like all the nuances of like what the referee is seeing.
You definitely got to know the game, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, with anything at a high level, I've heard some guys that really break down that scoring system that I've never looked at it like that, because I'm looking at it the primitive way.
Yeah.
I got to get to a finish. But, yeah, you can definitely just survive just by scoring those points and knowing when you need to move or adjust. So,
yeah, and there's definitely ways that you can game that system of, like, I'll give a prime example. Recently I competed in Hawaii, and it was like 0-0, and I knew I had to score to win, so I scored with like 40 seconds left, and then to avoid the penalty of not moving, I pretended to pass in order to like wind the clock down, So, I mean, there's still ways to game it, and if you're smart enough to understand the rule set, I mean, that's a way to win.
Yeah.
Well, man, I appreciate you being here today. I know, again, we did this before. We try to make it, get it out there before now, but, we're doing it again, and we definitely have to do this more often. So,
yeah, I'm down.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about anything.
Yeah, we got to talk some about your fights on the next one. So,
okay.
I know you got a lot of history there, but thanks again, guys. Make sure you watch us on all platforms and subscribe. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for today's Kings of Kimuras episode. Thanks for joining us on this epic journey. Remember to keep training, stay curious, and always be ready for the next adventure. Until next time, keep your guards up and your minds open.